I robbed them and I killed them as cold as ice, and I would do it again, and I know I would kill another person because I've hated humans for a long time. Wuornos was born Aileen Carol Pittman in Rochester, Michigan on February 29, 1956. Her mother, Diane Wuornos, was 14 years old when she married Aileen's father, Leo Dale Pittman, on June 3, 1954. Less than 2 years later, and 2 months before Aileen was born, Diane filed for divorce. Aileen's older brother, Keith, was born on March 14, 1955. Wuornos never met her father. He was incarcerated at the time of her birth. Pittman was diagnosed with schizophrenia, later convicted of sex crimes against children, and eventually hanged himself in prison on January 30, 1969. In January 1960, when Wuornos was almost 4 years old, Diane abandoned her children, leaving them with their maternal grandparents, Laurie and Britta Wuornos, who legally adopted Keith and Aileen on March 18, 1960. By the age 11, Wuornos began engaging in sexual activities in school in exchange for cigarettes, drugs, and food. She also had engaged in sexual activities with her brother. Wuornos claimed that her alcoholic grandfather had sexually assaulted and beaten her when she was a child. Before beating her, he would force her to strip out of her clothes. In 1970, at the age of 14, she became pregnant, having been raped by a friend of her grandfather's. Wuornos gave birth to a boy at a home for unwed mothers on March 23, 1971, and the child was placed for adoption. A few months after her baby was born, she dropped out of school, at about the time that her grandmother died of liver failure. When Wuornos was 15, her grandfather threw her out of the house, and she began supporting herself as a prostitute and living in the woods near her old home. On May 27, 1974, Wuornos was arrested in Jefferson County, Colorado for driving under the influence, disorderly conduct, and firing a .22 caliber pistol from a moving vehicle. She was later charged with failure to appear. In 1976, Wuornos hitchhiked to Florida, where she met 69-year-old yacht club owner Louis Gratz Fell. They married that same year, and the announcement was printed in the local newspaper Society pages. However, Wuornos continually involved herself in confrontations at their local bar and eventually went to jail for assault. She also hit Fell with his own cane, leading him to get a restraining order against her. She returned to Michigan, where on July 14, 1976, she was arrested in Antrim County, Michigan, and charged with assault and disturbing the peace for throwing a cue ball at a bartender's head. On July 17th, her brother Keith died of cancer, and Wuornos received $10,000 from his life insurance. Wuornos and Fell quit their marriage on July 21st after only 9 weeks. In August 1976, Wuornos was given a $105 fine for drunk driving. She used her inheritance money that she had received from her late brother Keith the previous month to pay the fine, and spent the rest of her inheritance money within 2 months by using it to buy luxuries, including a new car, which she wrecked shortly afterwards. On May 20th, 1981, Wuornos was arrested in Edgewater, Florida, for the armed robbery of a convenience store, where she stole $35 and 2 packs of cigarettes. She was sentenced to prison on May 4th, 1982, and released on June 30th, 1983. On May 1st, 1984, Wuornos was arrested for attempting to pass forged checks at a bank in Key West. On November 30th, 1985, she was named as a suspect in the theft of a revolver and ammunition in Pasco County. On January 4th, 1986, Wuornos was arrested in Miami and charged with car theft, resisting arrest, and obstruction of justice for providing identification bearing her aunt's name. Miami police officers found a .38 caliber revolver and a box of ammunition in the stolen car. On June 2nd, 1986, Volusia County, Florida, deputy sheriffs detained her for questioning after a male companion accused her of pulling a gun in his car and demanding $200. Wuornos was found to be carrying spare ammunition, and police discovered a .22 pistol under the passenger seat she had occupied. Around this time, Wuornos met Teria Moore, a hotel maid, at a Daytona gay bar. They moved in together, and Wuornos supported them with her prostitution earnings. On July 4th, 1987, Daytona Beach police detained Wuornos and Moore at a bar for questioning regarding an incident in which they were accused of assault and battery with a beer bottle. On March 12, 1988, Wuornos accused a Daytona Beach bus driver of assault. She claimed that he pushed her off the bus following a confrontation. Moore was listed as a witness to the incident. Let's go over the murders she committed and how these people died. Richard Mallory, age 51, November 30th, 1989, was an electronics store owner in Clearwater, Florida. Wuornos' first victim was a convicted rapist whom she claimed to have killed in self-defense. 2 days later, a Volusia County, Florida deputy sheriff found Mallory's abandoned vehicle. On December 13th, Mallory's body was found several miles away in a wooded area. He had been shot several times. 2 bullets to the left lung were found to have been the cause of death. It was on this murder that Wuornos would initially be condemned. David Spears, age 43, a construction worker in Winter Garden, Florida. On June 1st, 1990, his nude body was found along Highway 19 in Citrus County, Florida. He had been shot 6 times. Charles Karskanen, age 40, May 31st, 1990, a part-time rodeo worker. On June 6, 1990, his body was found in Pasco County, Florida. He had been shot 9 times with a small caliber weapon. Peter Seams, age 65, a retired merchant seaman who devoted much of his time to a Christian outreach ministry. In June 1990, Seams left Jupiter, Florida for New Jersey. On July 4th, 1990, his car was found in Orange Springs, Florida. Moore and Wuornos were seen abandoning the car, and Wuornos' palm prints were found on the interior door handle. His body was never found. Troy Burress, age 50, a sausage salesman from Ocala, Florida. On July 31st, 1990, he was reported missing. On August 4th, 1990, his body was found in a wooded area along State Road 19 in Marion County, Florida. He had been shot twice. Charles Humphreys, age 56, September 11th, 1990, a retired U.S. Air Force major, former state child abuse investigator, and former chief of police. On September 12, 1990, his body was found in Marion County, Florida. He was fully clothed and had been shot 6 times in the head and torso. His car was found in Suwannee County, Florida. Walter Antonio, age 62, was a trucker, security guard, and police reservist. On November 19, 1990, Antonio's nearly nude body was found near a remote logging road in Dixie County, Florida. He had been shot 4 times. On July 4th, 1990, Wuornos and Moore abandoned Peter Seams' car after they were involved in an accident. Witnesses who had seen the woman driving the victims' cars provided police with their names and descriptions, resulting in a media campaign to locate them. Police also found some of the victims' belongings in pawn shops and retrieved fingerprints matching those found in the victims' cars. Wuornos had a criminal record in Florida and her fingerprints were on file. On January 9th, 1991, Wuornos was arrested on an outstanding warrant at the Last Resort, a biker bar in Volusia County. The police located Wuornos' former lover, Teria Moore, the next day in Scranton, Pennsylvania. She agreed to elicit a confession from Wuornos in exchange for immunity from prosecution. Moore returned with the police to Florida, where she was put up in a motel. Under police guidance, she made numerous telephone calls to Wuornos, pleading for help in clearing her name. 3 days later, on January 16, 1991, Wuornos confessed to the murders. She claimed the man had tried to rape her and she killed him in self-defense. On January 14, 1992, Wuornos went to trial for the murder of Richard Mallory. Although previous convictions are normally inadmissible in criminal trials, under Florida's Williams rule, the prosecution was allowed to introduce evidence related to her other crimes to show a pattern of illegal activity. On January 27, 1992, Wuornos was convicted of Mallory's murder with help from Moore's testimony. At her sentencing, psychiatrists for the defense testified that Wuornos was mentally unstable and had been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder. 4 days later, she was sentenced to death. On March 31st, 1992, Wuornos pleaded no contest to the murders of Dick Humphreys, Troy Burress, and David Spears, saying she wanted to get right with God. In her statement to the court, she said in part, "I wanted to confess to you that Richard Mallory did violently rape me, as I've told you, but these others did not. They only began to start to." On May 15th, 1992, Wuornos was given 3 more death sentences. In June 1992, Wuornos pleaded guilty to the murder of Charles Karskanen. In November 1992, she received her 5th death sentence. The defense made efforts during the trial to introduce evidence that Mallory had been tried for intent to commit rape in Maryland, and that he had been committed to a maximum security correctional facility in Maryland that provided remediation to sexual offenders. Records obtained from that institution reflected that, from 1958 to 1962, Mallory was committed for treatment and observation resulting from a criminal charge of assault with intent to rape, and received an overall 8 years of treatment from the facility. In 1961, it was observed of Mr. Mallory that he possessed strong sociopathic trends. The judge refused to allow this to be admitted in court as evidence and denied Wuornos' request for a retrial. In February 1993, Wuornos pleaded guilty to the murder of Walter Gino Antonio and was sentenced to death again. No charges were brought against her for the murder of Peter Sims, as his body was never found. In all, she received 6 death sentences. Wuornos told several inconsistent stories about the killings. She claimed initially that all 7 men had raped her while she was working as a prostitute, but later recanted the claim of self-defense, citing robbery and a desire to leave no witnesses as the reason for murder. During an interview with filmmaker Nick Broomfield, when she thought the cameras were off, she told him that it was, in fact, self-defense, but she could not stand being on death row, where she had been for 10 years at that point and wanted to die. Assessed using the psychopathy checklist, Wuornos scored 32 out of 40. The psychopathy checklist evaluates individuals on a 20-item list of antisocial and interpersonal behaviors, with each item being scored at 0, 1 or 2, and thus a maximum score of 40. In the weeks prior to her execution, Wuornos gave a series of interviews to Broomfield. She described her impending death as being taken away to meet God and Jesus, and the angels and whatever is beyond the beyond. In her final interview, she once again charged that her mind was tortured at BCI and her head crushed by sonic pressure, food poisonings and other abuse worsened, she said, each time she complained, with the goal of making her appear insane or to drive her insane. She also turned on her interviewer. "You sabotaged my ass. Society and the cops and the system. A raped woman got executed and was used for books and movies and shit." Her final on-camera words were, "Thanks a lot, society, for railroading my ass." Diane Botkins, a childhood friend of Wuornos, later told Broomfield that her verbal abuse was directed at society and the media in general, not at him specifically. Wuornos' execution took place on October 9th, 2002. She requested only a single cup of black coffee as her last meal. Her last words were, "Yes, I would just like to say I'm sailing with the Rock, and I'll be back like Independence Day with Jesus, June 6th, like the movie, Big Mother Ship and all, I'll be back." She was the 10th woman in the United States to be executed since the 1976 Supreme Court decision restoring capital punishment. Now, I've seen a lot of interviews about her and a documentary about this woman, and I have to admit that killing is always wrong, but she's another one of those murderers that really had a fucked up past if you think about it. I mean, she didn't even know her father because he was in prison because he supposedly sexually assaulted children. That's already fucked up. Then her mother abandons her and her brother when they're super young. And then, during her lifetime, her brother also dies of cancer. So, it's kind of like she was all alone in the world. So I can see how that, in some twisted way, can screw someone's mind up completely. And that's clearly what happened to this woman. Either way, killing someone is a big mistake. I don't suggest anyone doing that, no matter how bad your past was. But, you know, in some cases, some people really can't handle all the stress and negativity that might happen during their childhood, and they grow up to become some really strange individuals. Let's just put it like that. Anyways, as always, dear viewer, have sweet dreams.